us. Welcome back to the Influencer Journey Show. My name is Suzan Hart, and of course, you know the beautiful Taria Hodge. Our topic today is why perfectionists don't become experts. Why perfectionists don't become experts. And I love this title because, when we look at experts all around the planet that we know and follow, so you think of those big name people, do we relate to them as that's who they've always been?
Yes.
Right? That's how they've always shown up. That's just how they are. And the truth of the matter is that is not the case. Right. Remember the statement at the beginning, every master was once a disaster. and so really this conversation is about the journey to mastery, the journey to expert, and what is standing in our way. And oftentimes it is this thing called perfectionism. Mm-hmm. So Julia, the first question is how to catch yourself when you're running ahead. How many of you run ahead and anticipate the worst? Yeah. So how do you catch yourself when you're running ahead and anticipating the worst?
It's one of those things that I tell myself or I have to remind myself that my purpose is to serve. And so when I find myself going into these deep places and it's all about the I, when I start thinking, oh, how am I going to show up? Or how is this going to look? How is this going to make me feel? Every time I have an I or me in there, and those are coming up for me all the time, is like, oh, you're not on purpose. You are focusing on the wrong thing. You are focusing on you. It's not about me. It's about those who I am called to serve. And so that's one of the things that when I find myself in those moments, I was just like, no, it's not about me. It's for others, right? So what can I do at this moment? My best self. How can I put my best self at this moment forward? And fortunately, that literally calms the nerves because it's not me focus, is other focus.
Oh, great answer. Mm-hmm. One of the things I've learned, and of course, mindset is my thing, it's my jam. And I remind myself when I do that is I ask myself, where are you, Suzanne? And I'll go, oh, you're in the future. Future hasn't happened yet. Yeah. Future doesn't exist. And recovering control, right? You can't control what has not happened. Right. So take a deep breath and bring yourself back to the present. Yeah. And just literally having that conversation situates me. Mm-hmm. Bring yourself back to the present, right? Now, the other part is how many of you worry? And I go, or I reflect back on what has happened in the past, mm-hmm. and I pull it into my future. In other words, I act like the past is going to reoccur again now. And so for me, it's really kind of reminding myself, where am I in my head? I'm often in the past reliving a disaster, or I'm in the present trying to control what has not happened. And so the first thing I'm required to do is take a deep breath, mm-hmm. breathe, and bring myself into the present. The moment I do that, I am focused on the now. Yeah. And the now is so cool. Now, the other thing that happens is that when I'm in the future, I'm also disconnected from the present. And what I'm also doing is I'm not listening. Yeah. I'm not hearing. I'm not focused in this moment. And so I'm also missing all the cues that allow me to actually get the information that allows me to be brilliant in the moment. Because when I'm in the future, I'm thinking about what I'm going to say. I'm thinking about what I should say. I've heard the first 5 words of what you've said, and now I'm anticipating and creating my perfect answer. And I'm not present to you. So I'm not in the moment. And so I think the biggest thing for speakers is to let go of preparation in terms of running ahead and crafting the perfect answer and living now.
Yeah. And I love that you're sharing this because that's exactly what we do. And I know it was, like I said, such a big thing for me, especially doing lives when I stepped out on the journey, of doing videos, but not just videos. It pops up, in different spaces, but especially doing live videos. And you say, well, yeah, this is what you have an idea. This is what how you want your video to go, or this is how you want the conversations to go in the marketplace, right? And then you plan all of these things, these conversations, but literally, like you said, what you're doing is you're running ahead and you're trying to anticipate an outcome that might never happen. And I realize, like, in those moments when I surrender and, like you said, become really present, then I receive those things, what I like to call divine downloads. So even though I prepared to say this, I showed up on camera, and then the audience needed this or they wanted this. And then it shifted the conversation totally different. And it's such a freeing experience to let it happen because it takes the pressure and it takes the weight off of you. So definitely being present, you know, elevates or relieves all of that pressure, and we have the ability to put undue unnecessary pressure on ourselves.
It's, part of it is, I don't know if anyone has ever done sales. Well, actually, everybody on the call probably has done sales. If you're an
Mhm,
entrepreneur, you've done
mhm,
sales. So I'll take that back. And so one of the things when I used to teach sales to my team, uh, we would do these practice mock role
mhm,
play sort of thing. And one of the things I would always ask them is, I'd stop them and go, "What did the person just say?" And oftentimes no one could tell me.
mhm.
And I'd go, "Why can't you tell me what she just said?" And what they'd realize is they weren't present.
Yes,
They were anticipating their next question,
yes.
their next ask, the next script piece that they were supposed to say, that they missed all the cues that would actually allow them to
Mhm.
move closer to the possibility of a sale.
Yeah.
And so really, it's really about how do we listen? And listening is listening to receive great content and understand is a present moment
Yes.
activity. And it is the same thing where you're on the stage. It
Mhm.
is it is really this, oftentimes there will be places that the content lands for the audience. There'll be reactions from the audience. And if you are just in your head about what's next, what you prepared, you miss those cues that are vital for engagement. And why are we highlighting this? Because influence happens through engagement.
Yes.
Influence happens when people feel heard, when people feel that their responses have been received, when people feel connected to. And so if we are so busy in our head about all about me being perfect, we miss
Yes.
absolutely totally the moment.
Yes. I love.
So it's such a great,
Mhm.
place to understand. And remember, this is called the influencer's journey. And the journey to expert is where influence is cultivated. It's in that process that it is key. So why embrace failure? Why embracing failure can set you free? This is a big one for me.
Yeah, it's also a big one for me. And I had to sit with this one for a little bit as we prepared. And it really took me back to that space of thinking just how we were taught to look at, failure. So one of the things that came up for me, especially in our culture, how we were raised, failures is a bad thing, and it's the last thing that you want to do. So you don't want to fail at anything. You you're if you fail at something, you're made to feel less than. And it's so rooted in that perfection all over it, and it's one of the things, unfortunately for me, that I didn't get until later on in my life. that
Mhm.
I had to redefine failure and take a look at failure in a different light. And it's looking at failures as the opportunity to grow. So if we aren't trying stuff, and that's the crazy thing about sitting in perfection, I've found when we sit in that place called being perfect and you want everything to be perfect, oftentimes it stops you from moving forward
Yeah.
and you don't do anything because you are afraid to fail. Where the beauty is, if you just get out there and you try it and you fail, then you have the ability to work on it to get better. It's progress. And so it's retraining the brain to get excited to try new things no matter what the outcome. Like, let go of the outcome, just get excited on taking the step forward to do it. And I love David's saying, but I have a saying that I always remind myself of too, is like you have to be willing to fail at it until you get great at it. So knowing that,
Yes.
yeah, no, knowing that it's a process and there's steps, but you can't get great unless you start. So you have to be willing to be bad in the beginning until you work your way towards being great.
It is so true. And I see Stacy. Stacy has just joined us. Good morning, Stacy. And I'm going to go to identity for a moment. And
Mhm,
I don't know about anyone else, but growing up, identities for me it seemed quite fragile. And also being a, a woman of color, growing up in an all white community,
mhm.
the pressure to look good and
Yeah.
fit in was huge. And I highlight it because it feels like an extra level of it. I think the pressure to fit in and look good as we develop for every single person
Mhm,
listening is so big when we're in those fragile age, particularly as teenagers.
mhm,
And so I know for me, I equated perfection as fitting in, being loved, being
mhm.
accepted, all those things. And I equated failure as rejection,
Yeah.
not fitting in, not being good enough, all those things. And this is a piece I really want everyone to get because I made it my identity. And
Mm.
I really want you guys to grasp this. It was Suzanne failing. Suzanne, the
Right.
person, is a failure, was how I held it, versus took an action and it didn't work out. I tried something and it didn't work out. And that distinction is so
Mhm,
important because if you live in the I am a failure because something didn't work, that's sitting in shame, and shame is debilitating. If you separate it and say, I tried this action and it didn't turn out as expected,
mhm,
now it's not you, it's a behavior. And now you can go in and say, what was I supposed to learn? What did I need to take away? What is the blessing in this moment? Until I was able to separate those two pieces, I was so afraid to fail because
mhm.
I saw myself as being seen as a failure,
Yeah.
as being seen as not good enough, and as someone who needed to prove to the world my value,
Mhm.
whole other life, but as someone who needed to prove to the world my value, failing and being seen as a failure was so threatening that I fought for perfection.
Mhm. Yeah. And like you said, it's embedded. Like we weren't taught that in schools or sometimes in homes. When
Yeah.
you sit and you look at it, everything is competition based. That's the thing that came up for me. How many situations do we create or we put ourselves in or we've been placed in? I try my best not to do it with my kids, is where you have them sit in comparison to others
Yeah.
and you compare. And what is happening with that, people really don't understand that that's the, that is sitting in perfection and breeding that perfectionist mindset. And it really doesn't do anything for the person. You hinder your growth. So one of the things that I like to say to myself whenever I catch myself in these moments is like, hurry up and fail, like fail faster. What are the things that I could do that would allow me to fail faster? So I know when I fail, there's always a lesson to learn. There's always an opportunity to grow and develop, develop more. So it's failing faster for me.
And you said one of the key things that is key to one is redefining failure and putting a new meaning to it. And for me, it's always it's an opportunity to pick something up and keep moving. I think until we redefine it for ourselves and literally put a new definition on it, we will hold it the way society holds it. And I think the key thing is, if we don't take the time to learn the lesson, it's also not valuable.
Right.
This thing that we're calling failure. I think the other thing that you talked about is the comparison. It's not just a comparison. I think it's society's definition of, well, it's a different version of comparison of what it takes to fit in.
Mm,
And to fit in does not allow for much difference. It
mm,
doesn't allow for our uniqueness. And for many of us, it doesn't allow for our brilliance to shine.
yeah.
And so think about it for a moment. That means I'm already set up to fail, because unless I'm showing up cookie cutter like everybody else, I'm failing.
Mhm.
And so part of it is really understanding that we all are unique, we all are special, as we say at the end of every show, and that is okay. And do I and you have the courage to not fight for this ideal of perfection, which is the same as everybody else? Do I have the courage to step out and walk to my own beat, beat my own drum, do my own dance, sing my own song, whatever that is, and say, this is beautiful,
Yeah.
right?
I love it.
That, I think, is the other part of it that we're and I think why it's so key is influencers are creators in my mind. Influencers are people who step outside the proverbial box and say, while everybody's zigging, I'm going to zag. And all of you that are interested in the zag or have been waiting to zag or need a guide to help you zag, follow me. This is an uncharted path, but this is the direction we're going. We're going to create a path. That's what an influencer does. So this topic is so key because we are required to give up our need to be perfect so we can find the space to be great.
Yeah.
As that's the
Yeah.
journey of an influencer.
And I'm sitting just here smiling because it's such a beautiful thing, because it's one of the things that I'm learning on the journey is that people aren't really expecting you to be perfect. We place that on ourselves. What people want is the real deal.
Yes.
People want to know, like, if I step out here on this journey, what are the bumps, the bruises, the, oh, you went through it, oh, you survived. Thank you for being transparent and sharing that with me.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the thing that people really want to see. It's not about the showing up perfect. And as we're talking about this, Suzanne, I love that you shared is that cookie cutter, that wanting to fit in. And I have to bring it back to social media for a second, because this, I think, is one of the biggest hindrance that I see from people showing up on social media like I know that they can. And the reason, and I, because I had to call myself on it. There's no reason why that I can't shine on social
Mhm.
media. But in the moments when I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm comparing. What am I doing? I'm looking at,
The airbrush photos.
yeah, the perfect stuff. The hair has to be perfect. You know, makeup has to be done, perfect before all of that stuff. That's not what people are really interested in. People, first of all, they want the connection. They want to know, do you have something that I could take to help me move forward in my journey? And every time we allow ourselves to go into that perfection mode that prevents us from showing up, we're doing our audience a disservice. So it's one of those challenges that I had to issue to myself as well. Am I only going to show up in those moments where I told myself that I was perfect, or am I just going to go ahead and show up, period, show up to serve? And that's that's kind of like where the show up to serve came from.
Hmm.
That self-talk of getting myself out of my head, in that vein of, oh, I need to be perfect. No, I don't. I just need to be real.
It brings us to the next question, and it's what's the
Mhm,
difference between perfection and excellence? And I'll share a quick story to just drive it home. So,
mhm,
learning to speak, and I show up at an event, and David is on stage. And in the middle of his presentation, he sits down and he says to the audience, he's tired.
mhm.
I look at him and go, he's tired. What's he talking about? And he says, oh, there must be another trainer in the room. And he looks and he spots me,
Right.
guest at the event. And he says, Suzanne, the stage is yours. You have 30 minutes.
Hmm.
Heart racing, shocked. Oh my gosh, I don't have time to prepare. Therefore, I don't have time to be perfect.
Hmm.
There's a lesson here I'm being taught because I'm stubborn.
Hmm.
And I get that. So after fighting and resisting, I finally take the stage. There's 100, 200 people in the audience. And he says, choose a topic, train on it, go.
Yeah.
So I choose a topic, I start training, and in the middle of my perfection, I forget what I'm going to say. I lose my spot. I did that. Now, old Suzanne would have pretended I was good and forced my way through it because I committed to looking good.
Right.
And the audience would have said, she lost. Oh my God, why is she doing that? Coachable Suzanne looked at the audience and said, I just lost my spot. Would it be okay if I start again? People giggled. I turned around like if I was rewinding, and I started again. And they erupted with laughter, and it was all good. And in that moment, the lesson was when authentic Suzanne shows up,
Yeah.
magic happens.
Hmm.
When Suzanne is willing to be perfect, not good things happen. I
Yeah.
disconnect from the world, I disconnect from the audience because I'm incongruent. And what I learned was excellence has nothing to do with perfection.
Right.
And excellence is when I am willing to go on the journey to being better than I was yesterday.
Yeah.
And in that moment, what he was attempting to get me to do is to put down the mask
Hmm.
and put down the need to look good.
Yeah.
And there's probably people listening going are horrified. Like, how dare he teach me this lesson? Most valuable lesson. It was a training, so I was in a safe space. It's the thing. Can I just be?
Right. And like I said, it's so freeing as you're sitting there and you're talking about it. It reminded me the first time we did one of our trainings together. And I remember saying to myself, this is huge. Little does Suzanne know, I don't think I know what I'm doing, but I allowed myself to be and do it. And the beautiful thing that happened is after the training, the ability to have feedback. So this is a thing that worked. These are the things that work. And these are the things that you need to improve on. And so the next time we do it, add those things. And it's like every time we do a training, every time we do a show, and I'm just letting our super achievers know, like, this is the work that's happening on on the back end. So every time we have the opportunity to do something, together, it's always that feedback.
Mhm.
This is, what you need to improve on. This is what worked well. So you keep that and then you keep going. And that's how the road to excellence is actually paved. So people think you arrive excellent. No, you don't. Is giving yourself the opportunity. And this is the thing that I think I want to say the most about this. How often are we giving ourselves the opportunity to become excellent? So if you do something once and you have a not so good feeling about it and you don't do it again, you just cut your opportunity short. But if you say to yourself, like, okay, I know improvement is required here. I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to do it again. Trust me, it gets better.
I want to really talk to the super achievers listening,
Mhm.
who are on their journey to becoming influencers and having that impact in the marketplace. You don't start with perfection. You don't start being perfect. You start, period.
Right,
And part of it is, how many of you have a program in you that you're still writing, still creating, still buffering, still polishing, still re-editing, still looking at, still rehearsing, still dropping another video, and you're going to say, I'm going to release it in 2 years because I need more time.
yeah,
That's not the way it works. And it really is release it. And Tree and I were having the conversation, and I tell her, I've never wrote a program before. I promoted it, sold it. Once it's sold, I start writing. And one is because I'll get caught in my own perfection if I do it any other way. But
right,
this is the other part, is that when I do that, when I teach the first lesson and I have the interplay between myself and the audience, the myself and the students, this is where I get the feedback that gives me stuff where I can get better.
right,
And I tell people, when I'm training, I'm as much a student as everyone I'm teaching. Yes, I have content, but it's that interaction and engagement that sharpens my saw that makes the next session better. Fast forward a year of teaching something, it's time to rewrite, because in that year, I have
so
learned
much
more.
change. Yeah,
I have read more, I've learned more, I've grown more. My students have given me more
yeah,
feedback, and it's rewriting. And that's where excellence happens. It's not like I wrote it, I got it, it's perfect, it's done. There's no such thing as perfect. Nothing is right. Everything is just what it needs to be in this moment. And then 2 weeks later, it's already evolved if you are willing to listen, look, and take the feedback.
yeah. I'm sitting here smiling because I remember going through a training with one of the influencers that I follow in the marketplace, Scott Olford. And it was one of the biggest aha moments and mind blowing things for me when I actually heard him say it. Now, it's not to say that it doesn't happen all the time, but he was the person who actually had the courage to say it. And so I had enrolled in one of his programs, and going through the program, he actually said, "This is the 12th iteration of
Mhm.
the program." And so first I didn't know what the word iteration, what it meant. So I had to go look it up. But then it dawned on me, like, oh my gosh, he has done this 12
Mhm.
times. Now, for our super achievers and our influencers out there, this is the point that I'm driving home with this. I did not encounter him until his 12th iteration of his program. So he had done it 11 other times and didn't reach who it was called to serve until the 12th time. And I'm making it about me. So, so just imagine giving yourself the opportunity to, each time you do something, know that, version one, you are going to serve. It's all about serving. When you do it again, who else are you going to be able to serve? Who else are you going to be able to touch and
Mhm.
reach? And as you work to make it better, who else is going to, and it's that cycle. And I think it was like one of the biggest mindset shift things for me, in this space, to know that I'm not the only person out there, who's looking at a product or a program and saying that it's less than perfect and it needs work. So just do it, learn from it, and yeah, and get better at it. That's it. It's all about the journey to excellence.
I love it. And, Becky's saying, wow, some of our comments, that's probably incredible. I see Barbara Polk has joined us.